live at the other?
Yeah, we go live at 10:17.
Okay, yeah.
So they'll connect on their TV at the other
Come up
location.
with 10:17.
Just the worship, just timing everything out. We're like, it has to be exact because it's like, all right, we're gonna be live.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. It's so good to see you guys. Yes. Welcome to Livewire. My name's Christine. I think all of you guys kind of know that. You should. You better know that. I got my coffee. It's going to be good. I'm here at Randall Boulevard with these crazy live wires over here. You guys are crazy live wires. We've been having a good time just hanging out and talking. So I want to welcome you guys out to church this morning. I want to say hi to everyone at Vineyards and also everybody online. So welcome. We're super happy to see everyone. And so you know what? I was thinking about this morning. You know how sometimes you wake up and you just do not feel like getting out of bed. It's Sunday. You know, you have the snooze on your phone or your alarm clock or whatever. You just are not feeling like going. And this applies to just work or just life. Sometimes you just don't have the feeling inside of you and you just are having either a bad morning or very emotional or whatever it is. You know, but the very awesome thing about belonging to God is that His power produces us inside of us, everything that pertains to life and godliness, His power inside of us. So it's okay to feel like you don't want to get up. Like, there's nothing wrong with having those feelings, and I'm so glad that you guys are so committed and you guys are always here, and you know, but it's okay. And all we have to remember, and it's just to remind all of us this morning, is that it's His Spirit on the inside of us that produces everything that pertains to life and godliness. So all we have to do is just say, all right, maybe I'm having a bad day, maybe it's an emotional time in my life right now, but His Spirit alive inside of us is awesome and gives me every single thing that I need. So thank you for being here. We're super excited. I do want to say last week, we just have one quick announcement, then we're going to get right into the message. Last week I mentioned that it was Josh, our anniversary, our 19 years. Craziness. 19-year anniversary, and I had mentioned that Josh, I was hoping he would take me somewhere expensive, and I was kind of joking because normally we go to like Olive Garden, like that's our big restaurant, or like Longhorn. Woo! Yeah, I love Longhorn. Like that's the most money we'll spend. And so he took me to Capitol Grill, and it was really good. So I just wanted to follow up on that in case you were wondering. Yes, he did take me somewhere expensive, and it was really good. I will say that every single bite of steak was probably like $2. If you figure it all out, it was expensive. So I'm like enjoying every single bite, but it was a lot of fun. So we enjoyed it. And so a couple of announcements. First of all, I just want to say we always are gracious. We're grateful that you guys give to Livewire Church, and most specifically to the Heart of God. And we got a letter because we do outreaches to the community. And one of the outreaches that we did most recently at the Collier County Fair, that was organized by actually New Hope Ministries, and then a lot of churches came alongside. But they sent her a Danielle Justice a thank you letter, and all of us as well who participated in this event, and all of you guys who donated soap. So I just wanted to read a little part of that letter real quick. The manager of all of the Collier County employees, because we gave them food and just items and everything, said, I've heard so many wonderful things about what you guys have organized and presented to our employees. You all have not only taken the time to provide amazing gifts to them, but your kindnesses have been above and beyond and made them all feel so special. Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. I won't read the whole letter, but they close by saying, I believe this is just the beginning of a wonderful friendship. Please keep in touch and let us know if there is ever anything that we may be able to do for you. And that was from the staff at the Collier County Fair, and so that's huge. And so we're just grateful for you guys who took part in that and contributed. So it was a really awesome event. So we're going to be doing more of those coming up. So I hope you guys are ready to hear a good message because Josh is going to be kicking off a brand new series this morning, and I'm going to let him introduce it. So it starts this morning. So let's get wired to the vinyl life today.
Amen. Yes. So good to see you guys, man. Those of you right here at Randall, those of you that are over there at our Pine Ridge location, good to see you guys. Or actually, I can't see you, you can see me, but good to have you guys join us. And those of you that are joining us online as well, good to have you with us. So we're going to jump right into it. You guys have experienced something being empty before, right? Every single one of us, like. Anybody ever have driving down the road and you look at your gas gauge and that empty light shows up? Sometimes it's just a light, or sometimes it's flashing, or sometimes the E is highlighted, whatever it might be. Have any of you ever run out of gas before?
Yes.
Anybody ever run out of gas? Christine and I, we had bought a brand new car. This was years ago. We bought a brand new car, and I don't even know that we've had it for a week. And we took a road trip, and we're not paying attention. We're just driving. We're enjoying our brand new car. Like, man, this is awesome. This is so cool. And then all of a sudden, it conks out, and I got to pull off on the side of the road. And we're like, what in the world is going on? Yeah, on I-75. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And sure enough, we just did not pay attention to the gas gauge at all. We were on empty. And if you've ever run out of gas before, or even if that light comes up, you just know, okay, my tank is on empty. And you don't know, sometimes, like, especially if you've had the vehicle for some time, then you can kind of gauge some vehicles, when it hits empty, when it hits E, you've got like 10 seconds. Some vehicles, I mean, you may have 10 minutes, you know. But for the point being that sometimes we just run on empty as far as whether it's our vehicle, or maybe it's your favorite drink, you know, that pumpkin spice latte, right, or the mocha frappuccino. And I mean, I only know these names because I've seen them so many times. It's not because I drink coffee, because I hate coffee, as a lot of you know. And so it's but you kind of drink that drink, and you're just like, you get to the end, it's like, oh, it's empty, you know, and or you take a sip of right, you hear the sound, you get to the bottom of it, oh man, my drink is empty. Every single one of us have experienced that before, where something runs out, where something is empty, where something's done. And maybe even for some of us, maybe those of us that are watching online, maybe even for some of us, we feel empty at times. Maybe there are times in our life where we just feel empty, or maybe we feel empty inside. Maybe there's some type of situation that has taken place. Maybe we've lost a loved one, or something that has happened where we just feel empty inside. And we're going to get into that even in this series. We're kicking off a new series. We're going to get into that even more so in the next couple of weeks. But this whole idea of being empty, or feeling empty, or again, our car running on empty, or our drink is empty, or whatever it might be that might be empty. I want you to kind of think about this along those lines of empty. Imagine a body being placed in a grave, and then a few days later, that body is no longer there. The grave is empty. Now, yeah, this happened. This actually happened. This actually took place. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. I want to welcome you, and I kind of printed this up. I want to welcome you to our empty series. You can see the empty cup there. But I want to welcome you guys to our empty series, because we're taking this series into Easter, and then even beyond Easter. And we really wanted to kind of really dive into this and really kind of talk about this, because this actually happened, or at least this is what Christians believe happened. See, nobody really wrestles, not too many people really wrestle with the idea of if there is a God. I mean, most people believe that there is a God. And not too many people even wrestle with the fact that there was an actual Jesus Christ, or actual person, figure named Jesus that walked the face of the earth. The hang-up, what we wrestle with, what we're not exactly sure about, is the whole idea of not even so much him dying, but when he was buried and a few days later coming back to life. That's where kind of the hang-up is. And so Christians believe this. Christians believe not only that there is a God, Christians not only believe that the Bible is the Word of God, Christians also believe that the Son of God, or that God came in human form and walked the face of this earth. And Christians believe that this man lived the perfect life that you and I could not live. And we've been talking about this over the last several weeks, that we're not perfect. And we might think we are, but we're not. And we make mistakes, and we fall short, and we mess it up at times. And so here's this man, Jesus Christ, that lives this perfect life. And then he is nailed to a cross. I mean, actually, even before that, he is actually pulverized. I mean, he is actually brutally beaten. In fact, we'll look at a verse in a couple weeks from now where it says that he was marred, he was disfigured more than any man. I mean, if you didn't know that it was Jesus that just was beaten, that was just punished, that was brutally bruised, if you didn't know that that was Jesus that went in, you didn't recognize who it was when he stood before the crowd and they were saying, crucify him, crucify him. Well, Christians believe that this Jesus, that he was pulverized, then hammered to a cross, hammered to a wooden cross, his hands and his feet nailed to a cross. And then he died on that cross. And this happened on a Friday. Actually, all of this happened. We see this in each of the Gospels, and especially Mark, John Mark, who's writing. We'll read some of his writings in just a moment. But John Mark is writing from Peter's perspective, which obviously Peter was there. He was one of Jesus' main disciples, James, John, and Peter. And so he's writing from Peter's perspective, and we'll see this in just a moment, that all of this took place on a Friday. And then Jesus dies about 3 o'clock, a little bit after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He says, Father, I commit my spirit to you. Or before that, he says, or after that, he says, it is finished. And then he dies. And so Christians believe that not only was he pulverized, but then he was hammered to a cross, but then that he came back to life just a few days after that. That on Friday, he was crucified, and on Sunday, he came back to life. Now, there was a couple ladies, and we're going to pick it up here. There was a couple ladies that actually on Sunday morning, they got up early and they went to go prepare Jesus' body for burial. Back in those days, especially, and even what we do today, when somebody passes on, or if it's a tragedy, and when we go up to that coffin, when we go and we see that person, I mean, they are beautiful. You know, they look great. They don't look like a dead person, so to speak. They don't look like somebody that had, there was a tragedy that took place, a terrible tragedy or whatever it might be. They look beautiful because the body's been prepared, and it's been prepared for burial. And so these women are coming Sunday. Now, mind you, again, this happened on Friday, and about Friday evening, Jesus is placed into a tomb, and these ladies are coming Sunday. Now, why would they wait till Sunday? Well, I'm glad you asked the question. See, I know you're thinking it. I'm glad you asked. Well, Jewish custom or Jewish law, there was a day that was called the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the day of rest, or was the day of rest. Okay? Well, the Sabbath was Saturday. Now, when that started, according to Jewish custom, that started from Friday evening into Saturday evening. That was the Sabbath, the day of rest, which meant there was no work to be done. So when Jesus died at 3 o'clock on Friday, they had to quickly, actually, and we'll see this again in the next couple weeks, a guy by the name of Joseph of Arimathea was a follower of Jesus Christ, and actually like a secret follower because he was a Pharisee, and most of the Pharisees didn't like Jesus. And so Joseph, he's a pretty wealthy guy, and he goes to Pilate, who was the governor of that area, the Roman governor, and he goes to Pilate and he says, can we take the body down? He's dead, he's passed on, can we take the body down, put him in a tomb? And they wanted to do it quickly before the Sabbath started, because if the Sabbath started, they couldn't take Jesus off the cross, because then they would be working, okay? They would be working, and there's not supposed to be any work done. All right, so now you bring that from Friday evening into Saturday evening. The reason why these ladies got up Sunday morning to go prepare Jesus' body for burial is because they could not do work on Saturday. See where I'm getting at? So they were bound, if you will, by the Sabbath. Just a kind of a little side note. Interesting to think that here's Jesus, and here's where, again, Christians believe that Jesus was crucified and he was placed into a tomb. Jesus, on the day of rest, is resting, that there is no more work to be done. Remember, Jesus said on the cross, it is finished, and the next day is the Sabbath, and it's the day of rest. There's no more work to be done. You remember God back in Genesis when he created everything and everything was done, and God says, it's done, everything is finished. I love everything that I've created. And God rested on the Sabbath, or rested on day 7. And so that's exactly what's going on here. So here are these ladies, and we're going to pick this up, Mark chapter 16. Here are these ladies. They're coming to, again, prepare Jesus' body for burial on Sunday morning. We pick up in Mark 16, verse 2. Notice this, verse 2 through 6. It says, very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, they went to the tomb. On the way, they were asking each other, who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb? So evidently, this is a big stone. I mean, evidently, this is not just something like we think of a stone. We're just like, oh yeah, it's bigger than a pebble, if you will. No, this is a huge stone. And now these ladies, they just didn't, with all the craziness that's happening, and obviously they're sorrowful, and they've been, they've been thinking about Jesus and what happened to him. And so they didn't even think like, oh, you know what, who's going to roll away the stone? Like, what are we going to do with the stone that is blocking the tomb, blocking us from going into the tomb so that we could prepare his body for burial? So who will roll the stone away for us from the entrance to the tomb? But as they arrived, they looked up and saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled aside. When they entered the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a white robe sitting on the right side. The women were shocked. Who's this guy? Who's this figure? Who's this guy in white robes? The women were shocked. But the angel said, so evidently this is an angel that's right there with them as they walk into a tomb. An angel is ready to welcome them. And the angel said, don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He isn't here. He's risen from the dead. Look, this is where they laid his body. So they walk in. And here's this angel, and he says, you're looking for Jesus. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth, the one who's been crucified, right? And he was laid here. Yeah, well, he's not here now. He's not here. He's been risen. And here, friends, is where the hang-up is. Because this angel claims that Jesus came back to life. But is that like for real, for real? That doesn't happen too often. Like, we wrestle with that. Somebody coming back to life. We can get past, if you will, a miracle happening, something incredible, something out of the ordinary. We've seen those things, and we can kind of get past that and like, okay, you know what, that's kind of believable. But somebody, and especially this man like Jesus, that was brutally beaten, to a bloody mess, especially this man, and then nailed to a cross. A bunch of people saw him die. It wasn't just, here are his 12 followers, or a bunch of people that followed him, because there were thousands of people that followed Jesus. But it wasn't just people that saw him die, that followed him, that said, yeah, we saw him die. Everybody knew. This was a place where they called it the skull. Golgotha was a skull, and it was a hill. And you could see it from miles away. And so it was a place that the Romans used as, hey, if you're going to break the law, if you're going to do something wrong, if you're going to do something that we don't like, guess what? This is what's going to happen to you. Okay? Because Jesus, it wasn't, not only Jesus was crucified, but he had 2 other guys that were crucified, thieves, that were next to him. And so everybody knew, and everybody saw this and knew that this man, he died, just like the other guys. They died. And this is where the hang-up is, because did he really come back to life? Did Jesus really come back to life? We don't wrestle with the fact that there was a Jesus that actually lived. What we wrestle with, and even Christians, and especially non-Christians, and maybe you're sitting across from the screen and you're saying, yeah, you know what? I've wrestled with that all my life, and that's the reason why I won't become a Christian, is because I don't believe that what Christians say is true, what Christians say is factual. I think it's actually a story that's been fabricated. Some people will say, well, I think it's a story that's been fabricated, that, yeah, maybe this real Jesus lived, but then, somebody stole the body. There's that conspiracy theory and all of that, which again, we'll talk about. let me just say this. Today is just going to be an introduction. We're not really going to dive into all of it because there's going to be so much that we're going to get into. And that's why, again, I just want to invite you not to just be here today. I want to invite you to be here for the next 4 weeks as we dive into this and we investigate a little bit more on this whole idea of the tomb being empty, because that's what our faith, if we call ourselves Christians, which I do call myself a Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ, that's what our faith rests in, doesn't it? In fact, I want you to notice what Paul says, 1 Corinthians 15, verse 2. Paul writes this. He says, "It is this good news that saves you if you continue to believe the message I told you." Now, when Paul mentions good news, this word, good news, it's just like you and I would use when we say something like, "Hey, have you heard the news?" I mean, this was just a regular word. Like we think of Christians, we kind of think of, oh, it's the gospel. Or it's the good news, and we think like Christians made that up. No, this was a regular word like any other word, that people use when they would tell somebody good news, or even if it was bad news. Hey, did you hear the news? Did you hear what happened? And so Paul says, hey, this good news about Jesus Christ, which what we as Christians, as Jesus followers, those of us who, again, follow Christ, we believe that this good news, or the good news is that Jesus Christ not only that he lived a perfect life, but then he was crucified and he died and he was buried, but that he came back to life, not only signifying that there is a resurrection after death, but also that we would come back to life. And the work that he completed, that it was finished, that salvation is complete, and also that there is not just life now that God offers us as far as this life goes, but that there is life after death, that there is eternal life rather than eternal damnation, okay? Because everybody's going to live forever. It's just, okay, where are we going? Are we going to have eternal life, or are we going to be separated eternally from God? But I want you to notice what Paul says. It is this good news that saves you if you continue to believe the message I told you, unless, of course, you believe something that was never true in the first place. Paul says, it's this good news. It's this good news that saves you if you continue to believe it, if you continue to have faith. You can't just believe and then just say, oh, well, you know what? Yeah, I don't believe. No, it's something that you have to continue to believe. And not just what happened, what Jesus did, but also as God makes promises in his word that we apply to our lives, that sometimes we don't see it. Like every single one of us, we've been there, right? Where we see God's promise, whether it's healing, whether it's blessing, something along those lines, or whether it's his guidance, knowledge, understanding, wisdom. And we're believing God for the promise. We're believing God to fulfill what he said he's going to fulfill in our lives. And sometimes we don't see the reality of it. But that's faith. Faith is, let me say this. Faith is not blind, and faith is not a lack of evidence. But faith is having enough evidence to make a good choice, to make a wise decision. And so, yeah, we may not see it, but we know as we continue to believe, God is going to bring it about in our lives. And so again, Paul says, here's this good news that's going to save you if you continue to believe it. But he says, unless, of course, you believe something that's not even true. Unless, of course, what we've been preaching, what we've been going around saying, all of his apostles and all of his disciples and all of his followers at that time and even today, bring it up to speed. Unless we've just been making up something. Unless this is just a story we have just fabricated. Unless this is something that is totally untrue and we're trying to make it so believable, we're trying to sell it so that people would run with it and that everybody would put their faith, put their trust, put their belief in something that's not even true. Because friends, I know as Christians, every single one of us from time to time have wrestled with this. And maybe it's because from time to time that person that doesn't believe, they've come up and questioned our faith and say, well, yeah, but what about this? Oh, well, what about this? If he's God, or if this really happened, and so we, from time to time, every single one of us can think of times where we kind of question, man, did it really happen? Did Jesus really come back to life? Is God really real? Is the Bible really, really true? And here's the thing, friends. If Jesus didn't come back to life like Christians proclaim, or even, if the first century Christians proclaim, the first century followers of Jesus Christ proclaim, if Jesus didn't come back to life, then you know what? Everything else is in question, isn't it? Like, isn't the Bible now in question? Isn't the New Testament now in question? Like, okay, what else was fabricated? What else is not true? Isn't the Old Testament kind of in question now? Isn't the existence of God kind of in question? Like, we start questioning all of these things because if this didn't happen, our faith as Christians, our faith hinges on this. And if it didn't happen, then what else did not happen? What else is not true? Is some of it true and some of it not true? What is true? I want you to notice, again, Paul writes in sentences down, verse 14. We were reading verse 2. Down verse 14, 1 Corinthians 15, again, he writes, "And if Christ has not been raised, then all our preaching is useless, and your faith is useless." In other words, this message, a message that I share week after week after week, Sunday after Sunday, or maybe it's a message you hear on a Sunday podcast or whatever it might be, that you hear live or that you watch the podcast or whatever it might be, my preaching, my teaching is actually useless if Jesus Christ didn't come back to life. And then on top of that, your faith, my faith is useless. My belief, my credence, what I believe to be true is useless if Jesus Christ did not come back to life. Now, the interesting thing about this is that Paul says, hey, maybe you believe something that's not even true, unless, of course, it's not true. And if it's not true, then what we've preached to you, that's useless, and your faith is useless. But you know what's astounding? You know what's incredible? Everything that Paul says after this, and even before in chapter 15. That's what's absolutely astounding. That's what's absolutely incredible. The only thing is, we're not going to get to that today. But Paul makes just some incredible, astounding statements that it has to cause, whether we're Christian or not, it has to cause us to say, I wonder, whoa, now that's interesting. I'm going to have to investigate this a little bit further. And friends, that's exactly what we're going to do over the next couple weeks, is we're going to investigate this a little bit further. Because this not only impacts us as followers, those of us who call ourselves followers of Jesus Christ, this impacts every human being on the face of this earth. That if it's true or if it's not true, did Jesus really come back to life? Is the tomb actually empty like Christians have said? Or is this just a story that's been fabricated? This is something that impacts, again, the entire world. Now, a couple statements that I want to make, and we're going to close with this. Really believing something to be factual, and here's the only fill in the blanks that we have for you this morning. Really believing something to be factual that is fictional doesn't make it factual. Think about that. If I really believe something to be true that's not true, it doesn't make it true. I mean, I could believe all I want. I could believe so badly that I'm this great husband and that I love my wife so much, which I hope I do. I could believe that so much. But husbands, if I'm treating her like dirt, I could believe all I want to believe. But the truth is, I don't love her. The truth is, I treat her like dirt. The truth is, what I believe is not true. It's not factual. And it's the same thing, like every single one of us, we've been there where we believe some things. And I'm not even talking about as far as God, the Bible, Jesus. I'm not even talking about that, but certain things that maybe we believed about people. And maybe we even, especially like living in Naples, sometimes we get that idea or we get that belief of that all rich people, they're snobs. All rich people, they just look down at everybody else. But that's a wrong belief, right? Not every rich person is like that. Yes, some rich people are like that, but there are many rich people that aren't. There are many wealthy people that aren't. And so we could believe that to be true all we want, but just because we believe it doesn't make it true. And vice versa. Really believing something to be fictional, that is actually factual, doesn't make it fictional. Really believing something that is not true, that actually is true, doesn't make it not true. It doesn't make it false. And so these two statements, it's going to drive where we're going. Because again, and this is where I believe a lot of people find themselves, because they might be believing something that they just say, no, it's impossible, that can't happen, that's not true. But if it is true, if the evidence is there, then it doesn't matter how much you say it's not true. The evidence states that here it is. There's evidence to show that this thing is true. So here's what we've got to find, right? If this whole idea of Jesus being raised from the dead and the tomb being empty, if that's actually true, if it is true, then there has to be evidence. Because our faith rests in not having all the evidence, but our faith rests in having enough evidence to say, yep, I wasn't there. I didn't see Jesus. In fact, if you think about it, nobody saw Jesus come back to life. Nobody. Nobody saw him. Nobody was there inside the tomb saying, man, you know what? He said 3 days later, he's coming back to life. I'm going to sit here. Just put the stone, roll the stone in. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to see if Jesus comes back to life. Somebody actually should have thought of that, And they didn't have video cameras like we have today. They didn't have video cameras to be able to record. Like, all right, man, I'm not going to be there. I'm not staying up all night watching this. I'm going to set up a video camera, right? Set up a video camera, see if Jesus comes back to life. The point being is this, is that no human being saw with their own eyes Jesus come back to life. But is there any evidence to support that claim that the first century Christians made, that the tomb is actually empty, that Jesus is actually alive? Because once every single year, now Christians do it year round, but once every single year there is this particular day that we call Easter, that Christians say, he is alive. Is he really? Is the tomb empty? Because friends, that's what we want to investigate over the next couple of weeks. We want to look at that whole thing. Is there any evidence to support it? So I want to close with a couple questions that I want us to think about that'll kind of also take us into our discussion. A couple questions. How sure are you that the tomb was empty because Jesus came back to life? How sure are you about that? Another question. What evidence do you have to support your claim that Jesus Christ is alive? And another question to consider, what does it really mean to have faith? What does it really mean to have faith? And so our house pastors are going to come up and we're going to get into the discussion here in a moment, but I want to close up in a word of prayer. Like I said, I want to invite you. This is just the introduction to where we're going, and we're going to investigate if there's any evidence to support that Jesus is alive, that the tomb is actually empty. We're gonna investigate those claims, and so I definitely want to invite you to go to our website, livewirechurch.com. Definitely want to invite you to be with us the next few Sundays as we get into Easter and then even after Easter. But let's close up in a word of prayer. God, I just thank you so much for what you've shared with us today. And Lord, I know that probably this morning especially, it probably raises more questions than answers. And it probably even creates more problems than solutions. But God, I just thank you that I have, even in front of me and even the people that are watching online, I thank you that I have intelligent people that are around, that are listening, and that are watching. And Lord, that these intelligent people, God, that they have the ability to even investigate on their own and search it for themselves. And God, that's my prayer, is that as individuals, as people, as men and women, that we would actually investigate these claims, these Bible stories that maybe we grew up with all our lives, and that we would actually investigate and we would discover what is true and what's not true, that we would discover it for ourselves and not just take what somebody else has said over the years and over generations to be true, but that we would discover it for ourselves. And so God, I'm glad that today that I've created, that you've created through me, that you've created more questions than answers, and maybe even some problems more than solutions, because I pray that it would drive us, God, to search these things out, to see if they are so. And so, God, I just pray that even as we have a discussion, whether it's by ourselves or in our house churches, I just pray that you would lead the discussions, that you would just draw us into your truth, that you would open up the word to us, you would open up the truth, that you would reveal to us the evidence that is out there. God, I thank you for it. We give you all the praise, the glory, and the honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Again, I want to thank all of you here at Randall. I want to thank all of you at Pine Ridge, and want to thank all of you that have joined us online. Definitely want to invite you to come out to one of our house churches. We've got a location near you. Go to our website, livewirechurch.com. All the information is there. Also, you can click on All Access Sundays to get All Access Sunday to get the information relating to Sunday as far as the message notes. And if you're a guest with us, whether again you're online or you're here with us this morning in one of our locations, let me encourage you to fill out one of the guest cards there on our website, livewirechurch.com. Click on All Access Sunday. Or we would love to connect with you. You can fill out the connect card also. So friends, let's go into our discussions. House pastors, why don't you come up? God bless you guys. Have an awesome week. We'll see you next Sunday. Mr. House Pastor.
Boy, that's good stuff.
Come on up.
Amen, amen. Okay, if anybody wants to grab some coffee or use the restroom, anything like that, please do so. I want to piggyback